Pressing wise, let's see here. If you guys want to set this up so it's down, we'll go over a bench press. And I'll talk about bench press because that's what we have here, but you can use a lot of these techniques just to carry over to any kind of pressing movement. Yeah, go ahead. So, bench press is a little bit of an oddity in that with squat, and I didn't really talk about this, but I should have. Squat, the most efficient bar path is going to be a straight line. That's why Tom, when he had that kind of metal guy up there, okay, that line right down the middle, because that's your optimal bar path, right? Because that's right over your midfoot, right over your center of gravity. Bench is a little weird. Bench bar path is not really going to be in a straight line because you typically finish right here, but you're going to have to touch lower, depending on your limits, and I'll show you guys that.
How do you want it?
That should be okay. I think so. Let me check here. That's perfect. Okay, so first thing to realize on a bench press, or any press for that matter, you can generate the maximum amount of force. So in any press, whether it's shoulder presses, bench press, incline press, whatever it is, you're going to generate the maximum amount of force with your your lower arm perpendicular to the ground. Does that make sense? Because if I have a weight like this versus here, going up, this is more powerful, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, cool. So now that we've covered that. If I have very short arms, so this is like squat. If I have very short arms and I take a really wide grip, I'm going to be able to touch really high up on my chest, okay? And keep my arm perpendicular to the floor. If I have long arms and I have a narrow grip, well, I'll just show you guys. You can watch how it changes. Actually, I'm going to take these weights off so you can see. It's not because my baby bench is that small. I actually can lift this. I just don't want to. So, team baby bench checking in. So how much you want to pay attention to me on this, I don't know. But, so, if I take a really wide grip here, I can be right here, and you see how I can hit pretty high up and still keep my arm perpendicular to the floor. Do you see that? If I go narrow, see how low I have to touch to keep it perpendicular? You guys see the difference? Pretty big difference, right? This is difficult with the headset on because it keeps wanting to hit. So your grip width is going to affect where you touch and also how long your arms are. So I have pretty long arms. Helps me on deadlift, sucks on bench press. So keeping that in mind, that's what I think, an easy way to look at stuff on any lift is you can just videotape yourself from the side and see where you've kind of got to be at in order to get that arm perpendicular, okay? Because that makes a big difference. The other thing you don't want is, so if my grip is really narrow, and I try to, so from your angle, I can still keep it perpendicular if I went like this with my arms, right? So it's still, but now it's not truly perpendicular, right? Because they're in. Same thing with if you go too wide, now your arms are out here, right? So it's a shorter distance, but you can't generate nearly as much force. Okay? Does that make sense to you guys? All right, so those are all kind of important things to keep in mind. So I'll go through kind of unracking, and I'll talk about how I do it if it was dumbbells. So first thing I really want to do is retract my scapula. So you guys see I'm just literally pinching my shoulder blades together. Okay? That protects your shoulder girdle. It also gets more of your back on the bench. Okay? So if I'm here, there's quite a bit of my back hanging off the bench right now. Okay, you guys see that? I'm not packing my lats or anything. But if I really pack them together, now I've got a lot more, probably about 50% more of my, well not 50%, probably like 20, 30% more of my back on the bench. I'm more stable, okay? And I'm gonna put it like, I'm a powerlifter, so I'm gonna put an arch in my lower back. If you're a bodybuilder, it's probably good to arch your lower back slightly. You don't have to go to an exaggerated arch, okay? From here, Take a deep breath to unrack. Probably a little bit hot, maybe that's all right. And then I'm going to initiate this movement by breathing in deep. Did you guys see me brace my abdominal wall, just like I did on squats, right? So there's that. And then I'm going to think about bending the bar, okay? Watch mine. You guys see what's happening with my arms there? I'm going to, Mike Teixeira calls this protecting your armpits, okay? So the easy way to think about this, this engages your lats, okay? Which helps protect your shoulders and it helps you move more weight. So when you do this, if you just even just grab your desk in front of you and just go like this, try to bend it and you will feel your lats engage, okay? So from here, okay? There's a few cues for lat engagement. I've always just found that trying to bend the bar is the best one. Yes?
I think that one of the problems with doing external rotation of the humerus will lead to anteriorization of the shoulder in the glute.
Well, so every give me there's a gotcha, right? So you get lat engagement, maybe it takes you out of kind of a, if you're exaggerating it too much, yeah. And I'm exaggerating it for the sake of showing people. But definitely if you're doing it so much that you're, especially with if you're having dumbbells, it's no big deal because they rotate with you. But when you have a barbell, you're trying to literally bend it. I mean, if your arms are touching your sides as you go down, it's too much, But just having a little bit of this, I've not noticed that myself or with other lifters. And the one problem with keeping them out is people tend to get like that, overpronation. They get impingements and that sort of thing because they kind of roll their shoulders forward. So, but you're right, and for every give me there's a gotcha. But for lifting more weight and keeping that shoulder girdle safe, I think finding a nice balance between kind of tucking the elbows, but as you said, not over tucking them. So that's a good point. And but most people I find aren't flexible enough to over-rotate them either. It's really hard to get them that far in. And most times they'll have wrist or elbow pain that starts well before they have something up here. Have you noticed the same thing? Yeah. So if you're starting to get wrist pain, if you're starting to get elbow pain, then maybe you need to back off on how much you're rotating. But some lat engagement will help you. And I get the same thing as I did on squats. People say, well, Layne, if you're engaging your lats, aren't you taking work away from the chest? You can't. We have this idea, especially in bodybuilding, that we're going to separate body parts, right? That we're just, okay, I'm working presses for chest, so I'm focusing until that. No, they're movements, you're training movements. And yes, you can do things that will isolate those muscles a little bit better, but for the most part, you're never completely isolating muscle. And if you are, you're probably putting yourself in a compromised position by doing so, okay? So, the other thing to remember is, when you're using more muscle groups, you can use more weight. It's more overall overload, okay? Even when I do dumbbells, like we were talking about, I'm obviously not going to try and bend the bar with dumbbells because I'm going to end up here and right here, right? But I put them at about a 45-degree angle. So whatever position is natural, you just punch straight out. When you punch, you're not actually like this. Usually, you'd be like right here. So I will actually press dumbbells like this, okay? Just because that's kind of a neutral hand position. Same reason that easy curl bars or cambered bars are cambered so they're like this, because that's a more natural wrist and hand position for you, okay? Most people who use straight bar curls for a long period of time, at least in my experience, have got wrist or elbow issues, just because that's a lot of torque, right? So, but again, that's one of the things about using a straight bar. We're limited by, we can't actually bend it. So, finding that right balance of being able to keep that line perpendicular, engaging your lats, but not over-rotating. Talked about bracing, talked about breathing. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything here. But it's the same thing. You're separating the reps. You're taking your time. You don't have to pause on the chest. I pause on the chest because obviously I'm training for powerlifting. That's a specific requirement. Just don't do this, please. And I'll talk about it because I used to do this. Boom! Boom! Please don't do that. And please re-rack your waist so it doesn't fall on your face. Yeah, don't do that. Your sternum loves you. Don't do that to your sternum. I see that. I call that the all you bro crowd, you know? They're the same guys who have the guy over him spotting him and he's like rowing half the weight, you know? So, now how to apply some of these things we've learned to other presses. Same thing, if I'm doing dumbbells, when I go down to sit down with dumbbells, what I'll do, so I'll have them on my knees, unless you've got a spotter. Obviously, if you've got somebody who can hand them to you, you can go ahead and get in position. But if you can't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them on my knees. I'm going to retract my shoulder blades, take a deep breath in so I'm already braced, kick it up, and as I start to go back, kick the other one, and I wind up here, right? And now I'm going to kind of tweak myself into place, take a fresh breath, and then start my reps, okay? So I can still use some of those things I learned on bench press towards dumbbells. And now, shoulder presses, especially if you're doing standing military presses, can you really retract your shoulder? Not really. I mean, but you want to keep yourself tight. And so especially on standing military presses, and even seated military presses, you want to think about engaging your abdominal wall. Because again, you've got this weight over you. So you're thinking about keeping your core tight, because that's going to stabilize you. Okay, it's going to keep this from going like this. Any questions about pressing? Even though I'm baby bench, yes.
Well, about the handstands,
How far close?
your tunnel,
Good question. I do not recommend a false grip, the thumbless grip. It's more comfortable. People have literally died from it. There was a guy in Russia in a powerlifting meet, got 400 pounds on his heart, stopped his heart. Even with 200 pounds, think about how much force that is hitting your. And even like and the kids in the United States, every year there's like 1 or 2 kids who die playing baseball because a baseball hits them in the chest, right at the appropriate, right when the heart's beating a certain way, and it just shuts it off. So I would not recommend it. I would just, it's not as comfortable, but I'd rather not be comfortable than dead. I always like to look at what's my best case scenario, my worst case scenario. My best case scenario is this. Is I'm a little more comfortable. My worst case scenario is I'm dead, so I don't do it.
down to the stomach?
Yeah, so I still kind of do the same sorts of breathing.
You could also keep it in the chest, so the chest area is more...
It depends on where you hit to. Most people actually are not going to hit, well, at least to keep, depends on your arm. But yeah, I mean, if you were somebody with pretty short arms and you hit pretty high in your chest, kind of pushing your chest out to help with that, yeah, that could work. So I always try to think about, as I'm trying to think about getting so tight that I'm having to pull the bar down to me to start the movement. And I'm trying to push my chest up to meet the bar at the same time, if that makes sense. Any other questions for Dr. Baby Mitch? I can make fun of myself, right? It's okay. Anybody else? Yes.
A different question. Do you see yourself as a bodybuilder as well as a powerlifter?
I get that. When are you competing in bodybuilding again? Yeah, I still see myself as both. And I'll probably compete again in bodybuilding. I just don't know when. Like, I feel like I've got some stuff left in powerlifting I want to do. And after that's done, we'll see where I am. But I was telling Daniel on the way over here, Ryan Doris has a great quote. He said, don't try to fake passion because eventually somebody will come along who's truly passionate for something. Don't try to fake passion for something because eventually you'll meet somebody truly passionate and they'll embarrass you. That's how I feel about bodybuilding right now. I just don't have that drive to go get on stage, so I'm not going to try and force it because if I do, I'm going to get friggin' whipped, you know? Because I don't have the best genetics. I mean, I've got decent genetics, but they're friggin' awesome guys. For me to do well in pro bodybuilding, I need people to be off. That's just, that's not me dogging on myself, that's just the reality of it. And so that means I've got to be able to really dig in and do it. And if my heart's not in it, I still love to train, I still watch my nutrition. It's just, to get to that level of leanness, I know what I have to feel like, and I'm not ready to feel like that right now. Part of it is, having a son and new kids and all that kind of stuff. And, I would hate to be like you know, my wife say, hey, come here, look what Robert's doing, and me being like, what? You know, just because I'm so tired. So, because even if you diet correctly and do all the things I kind of talk about, for most people at a certain point, getting that far below your body fat set point, you're just going to feel like crap at a certain point. So, it will happen in the future. I just don't know when.
Do you do isolation movements then?
Yeah, so I'll add isolation movements. Now, I was telling these guys, like when I'm traveling right now and I'm really crunched for time, those will be the first thing that I'll kind of have to sacrifice. And actually, when I was deep into my training for nationals, I was so high volume on squats, bench, and deadlift, I just didn't have time for anything else. I'd literally be at the gym 3 hours, 4 or 5 days a week. And, but I got home one night, my wife was like, she's trying to give me a complex or something. She's like, your arms look smaller. Yeah, well, you look like you gained 20 pounds, honey. I didn't say that. Hence the reason I'm still alive. But no, I mean, you're talking about wanting to give a guy a complex, so I immediately, like, you know, went into the gym and did like 800 sets of curls, you know. I found that, like, with that sort of stuff, I can kind of get away with not doing it for a while because it's always been a good body part for me and it tends to come back pretty quick. But, you know, if you have a weak point, something like I still do calves quite a bit. You can tell where I have such massive calves. I still do calves quite a bit even when I'm doing powerlifting training because if I don't do calves at least 3 times a week, I mean, they'll shrink away into oblivion. So it's kind of where I'm at. I mean, it's just, you know, everybody's got something that is a good body part for them, and you just got to do more, you know? That's why I tell people, like, just because somebody looks a certain way doesn't mean they have a blueprint to get somewhere, right? I always tell them, don't show me the guy with 18-inch calves, because they were probably 18 inches when he started, you know? I have a friend who has 19-inch calves. You know what he does for calves? He walks upstairs once a day, because his apartment's on the 2nd floor. That's it. He doesn't train at all. He's not a fat guy either. Like, he's built, and his calves are massive. So I'm like, I don't want to know what he did to get his calves. I want to know what the guy who started with 11-inch calves and has 15-inch calves, what he did. You know what I mean? That's a more kind of logical question. But, okay, sorry, I got off track big time. Any more questions about pressing? Yes, sir?
What about foot placement?
Foot placement on presses. Good question. Yeah, good question. So, you know, obviously we understand on squat and deadlift how much of a role feet play, right? Because they're directly under us. Bench press, they're not directly under us, they don't affect us as much, but still, it's one of those things that can give you a little bit of benefit by having them in the right position. So what I typically tell people is, as far back as you can get them and still keep them flat on the floor. Some people do really well toes up bench pressing. I don't like it, I just feel really unstable. I'm not saying it's wrong, just for me, it's something I don't like. And I find that, you know, if you've got a good solid base, you tend to be more stable. So, like if I'm here, from me, about as far back as I can take them, it's about right here. Right? Does that make sense? So I'm right here, and I'm keeping my quads tight throughout the movement. So, is it going to add, you know, by doing that, 30 kilos to your bench? No. But will it keep you more stable? Maybe help you get a few more reps as you get through a set? Yeah, I think so.